Thank you, Don. Good morning, everyone. My position at the United Way is the Director of Operations for Food Security. And it's kind of ironic that I'm working food security and I'm the person who's keeping you from lunch. Prior to joining the United Way 6 weeks ago, I spent 8 years as the director of the Canadian Bush Plain Heritage Centre that I hope many of you have been to, and if you haven't, that you will make an effort to go to. It's a phenomenal attraction here in Sault Ste. Marie. So I'm going to look at Neorn with both a tourism lens as well as a food security lens. In the case of tourism, as you can see from some of these banners, rail transportation into the hinterland in Ontario is crucial to both opening up touring possibilities from the group of 7 all the way to hunting, fishing, birding, painting, all the kinds of things that tourists like to do. It's also crucial for the ability to offer wilderness experience packages. Things like rock climbing, ice climbing, orienteering, etc. Those are packages that people all over the world look for and that Northern Ontario can offer a very high quality wilderness experience package. And transportation obviously supports business development in lodges, ecotourism experiences, corporate team building, and education products and so forth. So from a tourism point of view, rail infrastructure into the hinterland is pretty much it, because obviously highways will only go through one area and you can't access the wonderful natural experiences that can be accessed in the hinterland. About 20 years ago or so, I was asked to attend a trade show here in the Soo that was put on by the Economic Development Corporation that had attracted something like 35 five-star high-end tourism resorts from Europe, all over Europe, Scandinavia, Germany, France, countries like that, who were coming here to see their equivalent organizations in this wonderful natural paradise of Northern Ontario. Well, we didn't have any. We didn't have any to show them 20 years ago. We had lodges, we had fishing lodges and so forth, but not five-star, high-end, big-ticket resorts like they have in Europe. We just didn't have them then, and large degree, we still don't have them. It's obviously an economic problem, which is, the demand has to be there sometimes for the supply to be created. But that supply is starting to increase. There's a significant growth in Great Lakes cruising that's happening in this part of the world. When we first welcomed our first Great Lake cruise ships 3 years ago at the Bush Plain, we had something like 3,500 visitors that year. This summer we're expecting 14,000, and there's 4 new ships that will be on stream in the next 2 years. And those numbers, and cruising all over the world is increasing, but it is increasing in Great Lakes cruising as well. And so the ability to support that growth with rail transportation to inland touring and to resorts is critical if we're going to be able to take advantage of the growth in Great Lakes cruising. So tourism has many reasons. Neorn has many ways to support tourism growth. On the food security side, and it's not something that most people maybe have thought of, in fact, I didn't think very much of until I began working in the field of food security. Rail service supports growth in areas like wilderness harvesting, a variety of natural products that are in the wilderness, everything from mushrooms, maple syrup, chaga, morels, fiddleheads, berries, apples, wild rice, you name it. All exists in the wilderness, and it's all accessible if we have the infrastructure to go and get it and bring it back to market and bring it back to places where it can be processed. Many of these are very high-ticket items. If you bought a gallon of maple syrup lately, it's about $75 a gallon. Chaga mushrooms are $30 a pound. Wild rice is $45 a pound. We're not talking cheap products here. These are very high-end, high-value, high-ticket prices where the margins can support a lot of job creation in processing, collection, processing, and distribution. And the same thing applies to indigenous medicines, herbs, and other medicinal plants. We have such a huge, hundreds of thousands of acres of forest in Northern Ontario. Equivalent, the nutraceutical and pharmaceutical potential in the hinterland of Northern Ontario is equivalent to the rainforest. So for all of these reasons and more, Neorn is necessary. The business and job creation potential it supports is crucial for the North to stop the decline in the North and to start to turn that direction around. Retaining a rail line versus restoring one 20 or 30 years from now is obviously sensible, and it's obviously more economical. The rate of agricultural land that's being built over in southern Ontario, our most arable farmland in Ontario. I see some nodding heads here. I have family in southern Ontario, and every time you go, you see a new subdivision. Even if you go every week, you see a new subdivision, or a new shopping plaza, or a new something other than a farm. And the last point is that infrastructure needs to be in place in order to attract population. It's no secret that the population in Northern Ontario is aging and declining. So what comes first? The infrastructure that enables people to come here, or the people that will then need the infrastructure to move around? There are many challenges to our food security, a lot of which people just don't think about, just aren't aware of, or they're resigned to because they don't think they can do anything about. Control of the world's seed supply is a good example. If the environment and global warming and so forth, and what that's doing to agriculture in the world, will all affect our food security, our ability to be able to get food, period. Not just to be able to afford it, just to get it, number one, period. I learned of a very interesting fact yesterday, an unintended consequence of new laws that the Ministry of Transport has for long-haul drivers. Long-haul drivers now have to register when they start their shift on an iPad, and that data that they've started goes to a central database so the ministry can know how many hours that driver is driving. No more manual logbooks that a driver could fudge and drive more hours. And it's meant as a safety factor for the driver, it's meant as a safety factor, and you saw some of the consequences here that the OPP officer showed. But an unintended consequence is that drivers will be driving less, which means the people who haul food, there'll need to be more of them. And what does that do to cost? And it's those kinds of examples that are happening day after day after day that put our food security in jeopardy. And unless we're aware of them, unless we start doing something about them, like creating alternatives that NEORN would be, then very soon all of our food security will be in jeopardy. It's time for lunch, folks. Thanks for having me.